بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وما أرسلناك إلا رحمة للعالمين
ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. در ماه مبارک ذوالحجه قرار داریم. امروز روز دوم این ماه مبارک است و در انتظار یوم عرفه و یوم الاضحی به سر میبریم. انشاءالله خداوند کریم فضیلت‌های بزرگی را که در این ایام نهفته نصیب همه ما شما گردانیده باشید. متعلق با فضیلت این ایام همینطور الحمدلله آگاهی داریم. جمعه های گذشته و متعدد جمعه ها یا از طریق رسانه ها انشاءالله با فضیلت این ایام آشنا گردیده. انشاءالله که در این ایام ذکر خداوند، روزه گرفتن، عبادت کردن، دعا کردن از خداوند کریم باعث موجب است و ایام خوب است که بنده قرب حاصل کنه به نزد خداوند کریم. بارها الله رب العزت و بنده های خود مخاطب میشن که بنده ما از من بخواهید، دعا کنید، تضرع بکنید. وقتی که شما دعا کنید از خداوند و حاجاتتان را پیش خداوند پیشکش کنید، ضعفتان را بیان کنید و ندامت داشته باشید بالای عصیانتان و درخواستتان تواضع و خشوع باشد. و اذا سألك عبادی عنی فإنی قریب، شما مرا قریب میابید. متعدد سوال ها از رسول الله صلی الله علیه و سلم صورت میگرفت. در یک جا صحابه کرام در حدیث مبارک است وقتی که شما سفر میکنید در جای بلند یا پخشی می باشه یا حالت پرواز می باشه، حالت نشست می باشه، بر امروز شما تکبیر بگویید الله اکبر الله اکبر، الله را یاد کنید. صحابی سوال کرد یا رسول الله صلی الله علیه و سلم ما بلند بگوییم یا آهسته بگوییم؟ الله نزدیک است یا دور است؟ رسول الله صلی الله علیه و سلم آیت قرآن پاک می‌خوانند که الله رب العزت می‌فرماید فإنی قریب، و به شما نزدیک است. و مثال نزدیکی الله رب العزت در قرآن کریم بارها ذکر شده. و نحن اقرب الیه من حبل الورید، ما به شما نزدیک از شارگ شما هستیم. شارگ انسان قریبترین عضو یا قسمت وجود انسان است که زندگی انسان به او مربوط میشه، الله رب العزت میفرماید که از کدام من با شما نزدیک است. و در آیه مبارک دیگر میفرماید و نحن اقرب الیه منکم، حتی از جانتان که ما براتون نزدیک هستم، یعنی دقیقاً قرب هستم. و نحن اقرب الیه منکم ولکن لا تبصرون، شما نمیبینید. وقتی که الله رب العزت ما شما را دعوت میکنه به خواست، به دعا، به تضرع، به اینکه شما چی حاجت دارید، چی مشکل دارید، شما این را پیش کنید، شما این را پیشکش کنید به بارگاه خداوند، در دربار خداوند شما عذرتان را پیش کنید و خواستتان را پیش کنید و حاجتتان را پیش کنید. در اینجا خوشنودی خداوند شامل حال شما. چقدر فرق است با اذهان ما و شما که در زندگی حاضر یا در زندگی دنیا ما و شما او را با رب العزت مقایسه نمی‌کنیم. الله رب العزت می‌فرماید که وقال ربکم، رب شما میگه ادعونی، بخواهید از من، استجیب لکم، ما دعای شما را می‌پذیرم. ان الذين يستكبرون عن عبادتي سيدخلون جهنم داخلين. در صورت نخواستن، بی‌پرواهی کردن، خدا نخواسته خود را مکمل دانستن، الله رب العزت می‌فرماید کسی که از من دعا نمیکنه، نمیخواد، تضرع نمیکنه، عاجزی نمیکنه، سيدخلون جهنم داخلين. خدا می‌کنیم ما شما را از جهنم به امان داشته باشد. یعنی خداوند کریم چانس بزرگی را در حیات نصیب ما و شما گردانیده که دروازه رحمت الهی همیشه باز است، دروازه مغفرت همیشه باز است، دروازه خواست همیشه باز است. در قول پیامبر اسلام صلی الله علیه و سلم ذکر می‌گردد تا اندازه‌ای که تصمیم بوت انسان یا چتری انسان که یک چیز ادنا پیش ما و شما تصور میشه، در اون قسمت هم انسان خود را عاجز پیش پروردگار فکر کنه و نیتش می باشه و از خشوع حتی ادنا یک چیز کوچکی را که ضرورت انسان است او را انسان باید از بارگاه خداوند.
مخکې موضوع په دې قسمت پروګرام کې Dear friends, respected intellectuals and community leaders, we have had our past, we have our present, and we will face our future as a nation. Today we are celebrating our 95th anniversary of independence. Through the years, we have gone through many challenges, turmoils, outsider and invasions, and civil conflicts. But today, as you all know, after almost 15 years of civil integration, we're still facing challenges that are blocking a long-awaited peaceful transition of power. With challenges that we're facing, we're today, day by day, getting closer to our future. What will future hold for us? And what will we face? Where are we going from here? It's a challenging questions that our honorable guest and keynote speaker, Dr. Muhammad Humayun Khaimi, President of San Jose State University, will discuss. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Muhammad Humayun Khaimi.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله من علم من البيان ما لم تعلم واشهد ان محمد سید العرب والعجم. اما بعد، حضار گرامی، از همه اولتر 95مین استرداد استقلال وطن به همه دوستان تبریک میگم و تمام شهدای وطن همه ما دعا میفرستیم. I was asked to give my presentation in English and basically talk about what has happened very briefly in the last 10 years and where we're going and what's the prospect of Afghanistan from now as we look towards the future. Good. If you look at the last 10 years, according to the United Nations, Afghanistan in many ways has experienced the fastest growth in human development indices. For instance, in the last 12 years, if you look at the infant mortality rate, it has been reduced by a factor of 4. The life expectancy has increased, average life expectancy has increased from 42 to 62. Also, when we look at the fact that 11 years ago we had only 6% of the people have access to electricity, today we're talking about more like 28%. 12 years ago, we had one station, TV station, radio station, and today, when you look at all of the media, we have more than 700, and we look at all of the papers and whatever, we're looking at more than 1,000. And I recall in beginning of 2002, the Swedish company had given the government 64 Ericsson mobile phones, and today over 86% of the Afghan people have access to mobile phones. And I think that really shows that in many ways Afghanistan has really come a long way. But besides, but one of the other programs in Afghanistan that has been very successful is the National Solidarity Plan. This is one of those plans where individual villages were given grants. And these grants have been very successful, where over 80% of the work was done by the Afghans, by the locals. And the success of these ones have been such that we have had more than 17,000 of these projects all over the country. And if you go to the next slide, it gives you one more. That gives you the results of these ones that, you can see that tens of thousands of schools, tens of thousands of hospitals and others has been built as part of that, and I think that really shows the success of these programs. But despite these successes, we have major challenges also in Afghanistan. Look at it, after 12 years, we still have only 7.5% of the GDP is really raised by our revenues. The jobless rate among our youth, specifically when we talk about people of 29 years and younger, we have more than 40% unemployment rate. As in terms of corruption, Afghanistan is recognized as the most corrupt country in the world, and Transparency International has marked us as 180 among 180 countries. And also, I think from many other aspects, we still see that drugs have such a major important part of our economy, and as I said, less than 1/3 of the country has access to electricity. This is the irony of Afghanistan, that we are in a country that a flower has become our problem, and a flower has become the enemy of the country. So if you look at the key issues and the challenges that Afghanistan has, whether it's corruption, whether it's insurgency, whether it's all of these key elements are part of the problem of Afghanistan. And the idea is that we look towards the future. What are the kind of things that we can do as we move towards the future? I had written an article about a month ago on foreign policy, and it got published, and basically identified a number of key elements that we need to do to move forward in Afghanistan. And those ones are looking at good governance, looking at better economic conditions, human capital, and so on and so forth. And part of that, I was happy that in the first week that article got about over 20 million Google hits. And what I would like to do is talk to you a little bit about that article. I think for Afghanistan to be able to move forward, one of the key elements is how we can really increase our exports. Today, Afghanistan imports about $9 billion worth of materials, but our export is about 415 million. I mean, even the basic food stuff in Afghanistan is being imported. I mean, imagine we're importing onions from China. From 2009 to 2012, the amount of chicken that Afghanistan imported was over $135 million. I mean, a country that was very known for its agriculture. So I think for us to be able to move forward, we have to look at our export in a very major way. So what I had tried to do in this graph is to give it in a very simple way. When you're trying to export in a country, you have to look at some basic things. First of all, what are the things that we can extract from the land, like our mines? What can we really grow for our agriculture? What can we really manufacture? And also what can we really have in terms of trade? And also the other two dimensions, one was looking at the human capital, and the other dimension was looking at all of the other basic infrastructure of Afghanistan. You go to the next slide. Basically, I wanted to talk a little bit about these key sectors from mining, agriculture, commerce, human capital, and water and electricity. The first one is the mining. I think all of us have seen the results, the date of the mining that USGS has published about Afghanistan, and Afghanistan being so rich that potentially somewhere between $1 to $3 trillion worth of mining exists in Afghanistan. I think one of the other great things about the mining potential in Afghanistan is that it's not in one part of the country. As you can see, it's all over the country. It's many areas, not only from energy sources as well as rare earth material, some of the minerals that are really very much needed. If this becomes a reality, Afghanistan will have even more. Right now, the country that has the largest amount of rare earth material that are used for many of the high-tech industry, it's in China. Afghanistan could surpass that. So that really shows the capabilities that Afghanistan has. But the key is that how we're going to be using those mines. The way that those mines will be extracted, the kind of contracts and the accountability of those mines is going to be very important, because we know many African countries have a lot of mines, but they live in a very miserable life and only have a few rich individuals rather than the entire country benefiting from it. So the whole concept of transparency and the contracts in the way, and to what extent it really generates other manufacturing and other capabilities, I think is going to be quite important. I have two other slides which give you some of the other mines, for instance, in terms of iron in different parts of Afghanistan. Copper is the next one. And the next one also shows some of the other tungsten and a few of some of the rare earth materials. I think if we go to the next slide, I want this talks about energy, and of course not only natural gas, coal and oil. Afghanistan still has quite a bit of it. And if you look to the northwest of the area, north of Afghanistan, that's where in Tajikistan, the area of Panjshir, which Afghanistan lost during the time of Amir Abdurrahman Khan, that's the fourth largest natural gas reserves in the world. So that kind of gives you about the kind of major resources that Afghanistan lost. Now, in terms of agriculture, I think agriculture has, traditionally has been one of the elements that Afghanistan had quite a bit of capability. If you go back to the 1970s, we had about 3.3 million hectares of land that was irrigated. Today it's less than 1.8, or close to half of that one. Also livestock, we lost about 70% of the livestock that we had in the 1970s compared to today. Also, even the land that we are using, the productivity is quite low. For instance, in Afghanistan, per hectare in wheat, we get about 1.8 to about 2.6 metric ton of wheat, while our neighboring countries can get somewhere between 4 to 4.5. So that shows the kind of difficulty that we've had. Afghanistan has only less than 10% of its agricultural land actually being irrigated, while on the other hand we have about 45 to 55% of the country to be in malnutrition. The part is that we know that Afghanistan at one time it was so rich in terms of its agricultural capability. For instance, if you look at even 1960s and 70s, Afghanistan was producing 20% of the raisins for the entire world. So I think we still have a lot of that potential. We look at saffron that has been brought to Afghanistan now. In saffron, they're getting about $25,000 per acre. For pomegranate, they get somewhere between, not acre, I'm sorry. Or for pomegranate, we get about $16,000 per hectare. And it's ironic that saffron that brought from Iran was actually moved from Afghanistan to Iran in the 15th centuries. Afghanistan, actually it was Herat that had the saffron, not Iran. The other part is looking at all of our water basins, and Afghanistan has been very rich in terms of the water quality, the amount of water it has. It's true that all of the water that we have in Afghanistan is surface water, about a third of it being part of the Kabul Basin, and a good amount of it being surface water and groundwater. But we have not really used, because of the fact that we do not have adequate dams. For instance, if you look at the Kabul Basin, which is coming from Hindu Kush, about 86 to 90% of that water really comes from April to sometime in August. And not having adequate dams is a big problem in Afghanistan, both for electricity as well as for agriculture. And the other aspect is that in very droughty years, that flow drops about 40%, and that really causes a major problem for the country as well. The other one is that, of course, as I mentioned, in terms of livestock being so low, where we had less than 30% of what we had in the 1970s. So I think a lot of work could really be done in this area to really build that livestock, as well as all of the associated industries that could really help us in that area. The next slide. This is a picture that shows the five main water basins in Afghanistan, from Amud Darya Basin, of course the Harirud and Murghab, the Helmand Basin, and Kabul Basin. And also, as part of that, of course, a good amount of water from Afghanistan goes to our neighboring countries. And Afghanistan is one of the countries that has the least amount of contracts or agreements with our nation and neighboring countries. And so the riparian law, or the international law that really controls that, is something that Afghanistan has not really addressed. The only one that we had close to an agreement was with Helmand, and the other ones we do not have, unfortunately. And because of these issues, even the Salman Dam that had started in the 1970s, because of the fact that, of course, basically Iran does not want that dam to be completed, in the last 12 years that the government has worked on it, they have not been successful to finish that. The other key element will be the roads. I'm glad to say that a good amount of the ring road in Afghanistan has been completed, and the ring roads have been one of those projects that has been quite successful from that point of view. But this will really have a major impact in being able to move a lot of the, not only agricultural products, but as well as other kind of extracted materials as well. The next one really shows some of the work on the railroad systems. I think this will really help the country to really get connected to the region as a whole. And I think the next slide kind of give you a sense of how it could really mean on Afghanistan's railroad being connected to the rest of the world. And as colleagues earlier mentioned, unfortunately, some of this work had really started back 95 years ago. And it's young people and get the kind of education that is needed. That's what it could really create a lot of our manufacturing that it's really needed in Afghanistan. One way that could be done is maybe break that country into about 7 or 8 major economic zones, and looking at every economic zone to see what it can really do. For instance, if you look at Herat is really building more in the area of high-tech area, as well as of course, in Kandahar area with all of the fruits and the processing in that area. The way that the host is really been developing in a number of key aspects, while we're looking at Mazar-e-Sharif for energy. So I think each and every one of these areas could really be an economic cluster for these industries, and building that human capital is going to be quite important. And if we have more than 200 somewhat TV stations, why don't we use a lot of those TV stations as the way to, as a means to really get a lot of the technical programs and teaching through that, rather than necessarily the traditional classroom. I think one of the other important elements of the human capital is, because I think the three elements that you see here, the good governance, trying to have better wealth and prosperity, these are the basic things that everyone wants. But if you go to the next slide, for us to be able to build that one, we need law and order and a wider economic ability, and all of those ones are connected to education. So education in many ways will be the key element in bringing good governance, and the basic elements of good governance is going to be accountability, transparency, the rule of law, and looking at the fact that when a government is elected, they are accountable not only once every 5 years when people go to the voting booth. Democracy is a 24/7 operation every day, every 365 days of the year, and through educated citizenry, I think that's one way that we can accomplish that. Next one is looking at electricity. Electricity has an energy as a whole. I think there is a lot of potential, and not only in terms of the kind of improving the quality of life for everyone, but as well as export possibilities from Afghanistan, and also in terms of a strategic element, political strategic element, which I'll mention in a minute. As you can see, this really gives you a sense that I think there has been major improvement from 6% getting to about 28% of people now having access to electricity. No, I think you went to the wrong way. Oh, yeah. That gives you a sense of about right now how much people have electricity. Unfortunately, it's only in the key cities, and even there, it's the percentage is relatively small compared to any even neighboring countries. But the next slide can give you a sense of where most of that electricity comes. As you can see, a lot of that electricity that we get is now brought from neighboring countries. In the last 12 years, the government was not failed to finish even a single electrical plant, which is really a major shame. So, which means that if you go to the next slide, that gives you all of the countries that we buy electricity, specifically Uzbekistan to be the largest. If any of these countries decide to turn off that power, they can cause havoc in the country. So in a way, we're so much in the mercy of our neighboring countries as we talk about getting electricity for Afghanistan. In terms of the natural gas, you can see that Afghanistan has quite a bit of capability. Afghanistan had been exporting natural gas for a good period of time, even from 40 years ago. But there is enough natural gas that not only meets some of our electric needs, but also meet a lot of the major needs of the country in terms of thermal and other purposes. Coal is a major element, but also there has been some work done in the renewables, and I think renewables is going to be very helpful when we talk about villages, when we talk about areas of the country that's not going to be part of the major power grid for the country. Going forward, I think I put this slide out, which really shows that Afghanistan has enough potential to generate about 23 million kilowatt hours of electricity. To give you a sense about how much is the entire generation capacity of Afghanistan right now, is about 500 megawatts or 5 million kilowatts. This particular slide is the information that I had, and which was part of the surveys that was done in Afghanistan in the 1960s. When I was in high school, I remember on cable radio hearing about this information. And if we are able to do even a part of this, Afghanistan could be a major exporter of electricity to our neighboring countries that really have a major need for electricity. Let's go to the next slide. Afghanistan, as part of it, can really be part of a regional grid for the whole region. I think the next slide can really give you a sense of it, because all of the Central Asian countries are connected as part of the grid. Afghanistan could be an entity to bring a lot of that electricity through Afghanistan and take it to Pakistan. Pakistan has a major power problem right now. If any of you had followed some of that last summer, many areas of Pakistan had major power shutdowns. Right now, Pakistan has about 20,000 megawatt of capacity, but by 2025 or 2030, they will need about 90,000. If you look at the extra capacity that Tajikistan has the capacity of about 40,000 megawatts. To give you a sense of a few of their major plants, one of them is the Ragun plant that has the capacity of about 3,600 megawatts of power. Sangituda has about 300 megawatts, and the last one has about 2,700. Just to give you a sense of it, each and every one of these plants has more capacity than 20, 25 times all of the installed capacity of Afghanistan. So the whole plan is how some of that electricity through Afghanistan can go in to the neighboring countries, specifically Pakistan. As part of it, Afghanistan will be able to have some income in some of that, as well as meeting the needs of Pakistan. To give you a sense of it, one of the first projects that has already started, this is Casa 1000, if some of you may have heard. Casa 1000 is going to get electricity from Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan to take it to Afghanistan to Pakistan. Basically, Pakistan will get about, in the summertime, they'll get about 1,300 megawatt of power. In the winter time, about 1,300 will go to Afghanistan. The work has already started, and supposedly this project will be completed by 2017. The cost of this project is about $1 billion. And what it will really do, it will really help Pakistan get electricity, but as part of it, Pakistan now needs a stable Afghanistan. So the stability of, because one of the problems with our neighbors are that up to now they have looked at an unstable country to be to their benefits. Hopefully they'll see that the stability of Afghanistan is far more to their benefit than Afghanistan not being stable. The next project, which is a major project, this is the TAPI, or the natural gas line. I think many of you have heard about it since the early 1990s. One of the projects that really led to the rise of the Taliban. It was part of this project, and because of lack of time, I will not discuss that one. But hopefully, when this pipeline, natural gas pipeline, is built, it will not only help, of course, revenue for Afghanistan, but meet all of the Pakistan needs, and eventually can get to India and really create a closer economic environment between the four countries. TUTAP is another major project. It stands for Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, Afghanistan, Pakistan. And basically, this is going to be a set of electrical lines that will connect Turkmenistan, Tajikistan, Afghanistan, Uzbekistan, and Kyrgyzstan through Afghanistan to get electricity to Pakistan. It will give Pakistan the capability of getting about 4,500 megawatts of power. It will get about 300 for Afghanistan. The cost of this project is about $14 billion. But the amount of savings that will do for Pakistan, it will save them from not spending $35 billion for the amount of generation capacity that it needs. So as part of it, I think these projects could really be a major help for the country, for the region, for as a strategic stability area, not only for economic reasons. And I think these are some of the potentials that I think we really see in Afghanistan. And I think to me that really says that a lot of issues that I had in Afghanistan are great. The potential is quite there, but we recognize that it's not going to be easy, and as they say in English, that we have to make elephants fly. I think that's the only way that you can really do to make the country move forward. Go to the next slide. This is a set of flowers that I had taken pictures back in the spring of 2002, because when I first went to Afghanistan in February of 2002, the country entirely looked very gray. And when I went there 6 months later, I think in Shahrnam area, I saw some of the houses which had flowers. And to me, that was a whole sense of optimism for the country. And I was still caught these pictures because that gives me that sense of optimism, that sense of where the country can go, that sense of rejuvenation for Afghanistan. And I think through that kind of a process, we'll be able to move the country forward. And lastly, I think the other part that the government hopefully will take is the whole idea of eradication of poverty. And eradication of poverty in some of our groups are quite big. When you look at the fact that we have over 1 million people as refugees basically internally in about 6 of our provinces, we have a large number of disabled people, over 1 million people. We have nomadic people who are economically very challenged. Female households is another key area. Residents of highlands area which do not have much agricultural means, and a lot of street children who are, many of them, raising and helping their countries. So I think with all of these projects, with all of these things, hopefully we can see a better Afghanistan, and in the next decade will be far better days for Afghanistan. Again, thank you very much for your time and your pleasure.
Thank you very much, Dr. Seb. I hope we'll have a day where we can discuss this in Afghanistan really in details. تشکر یک جان. افتخار بزرگ از شخصیت دانشمندی را در جامعه خود داریم. بیارم صفی جان پروگرام پیش ببرم. لطفاً please welcome him.
سلام به تمام دوستای عزیزی که امشب تشریف آوردن. البته دیشب به من زنگ زدن ولی من کمی مسئول بودم امروز چون نتونستم خودم بیام ساعت تکرار کنم. کسی را غیر کرده بود منتها خب هرچی که هست خدا کنه که اذیت نشن. ساند یکی دو پارچه میخوانیم اگه خسته شدین ساند هم باز دوست نداریم بگیم چه نشد.
Tu hi aga
بینندگان عزیز سلام بر شما. من اسماعیل درمان کارمند سی پروژه سطح روانی افغان ها یا Afghan Mental Health Project هستم که خلاصش میشه AMHP. پروژه سطح روانی افغان ها که مرکزش در فریمانت است در همکاری با چند مؤسسه دیگه به پیش میره. من در اینجا این مؤسسات براتون نام میگیرم: Afghan Coalition, Afghan Cultural Society, Afghan Professionals Network, Afghan Psychological Association, Afghan Seniors Association of the Bay Area, East Bay Agency for Children و Lemar TV. در برنامه امروز روی یک موضوع جالب و مهم دیگه که مرتبط با سطح روانی صحبت میکنم و او مهاجرت و تطابق با فرهنگ نو است. از هزاران سال پیش به این طرف انسان‌ها برای دستیابی به منابع بهتر، فرصت‌های شغلی بیشتر و زندگی مرفه‌تر به مناطق مختلف سفر می‌کردن و سفر می‌کنن و مهاجر میشن. در کنار از اینا یک تعداد افراد هم طبیعتاً به خاطر نه تنها لزوماً به او دلایلی که اشاره کردم بلکه به خاطر آرامش جانی و ذهنی و روانی و امنیت جانی خود دست به مهاجرت میزنن. در زیر بخش مهاجرت کردن طبیعتاً یک سلسله تصمیم ها هم نهفته است. وقتی که ما صحبت از فرصت های شغلی و کاری بیشتر میکنیم، موضوع تحصیلات هم نهفته است، یادگیری زبان نو هم نهفته است، یادگیری مهارت های جدید و آشنایی با جغرافیا و مردم نو هم نهفته است. وقتی که به تاریخ و روند مهاجرت افغان ها نگاه میکنیم میبینیم که بیشتر عناصر نهفته در مهاجرت افغان ها ریشه در امنیت جانی و نجات دادن خود از کشمکش های داخل کشور داشته و طبیعتاً روی نوع مهاجرتشان و انتظاراتشان از محیط نو تاثیر خود گذاشته. یک چیز عمده که باید نظر بگیریم این است که اکثریت از این افراد بدون برنامه‌ریزی دست به مهاجرت زدن و زمانی که شخص بدون برنامه‌ریزی دست به مهاجرت می‌زنه با یک سلسله مشکلات و چالش‌ها در محیط نو روبرو میشه، در کشور میزبان، در فرهنگ میزبان، بین مردم میزبان و یک سلسله چالش‌ها مواجه میشه که یا انتظارش نداشته یا مهارت‌های کافی برای مقابله با این چالش‌ها را نداشته و حال سرش یک سلسله فشارها وارد میشه، یک سلسله مشکلات در زندگیش به وجود میاد که نیاز است به اونا پرداخته شد. چیزی که مورد توجه باید باشه این است که چالش‌ها برای اکثر افراد میتونه به وجود بیاد. برای کسایی که حتی برنامه ریزی میکنن و محیط نو میان میتونه یک سلسله مشکلات برشان به وجود بیاد. مثلا فرهنگشان متفاوت باشه و در کشور نو که میاین، در کشور میزبان کاملا با فرهنگ جدید و متفاوت روبرو شوند. یا همچنان در قسمت زبان، در قسمت مهارت ها، مثلا شغلی که در کشور خود داشتن در محیط نو شاید متفاوت باشه، شاید از او استفاده بهینه کردن نتونن و نیاز به این باشه که همه چیز از صفر شروع کنن. نخستین مورد ما با تفصیل بیشتر سرش حرف میزنم. فرهنگ نو. فرهنگ یک گستره وسیع شامل میشه که در او ارزش‌های اخلاقی است، ارزش‌های یا سیستم‌های باور و عقیده هست و زبان است. یعنی حداقل این موارد در گستره فرهنگ نهفته است. و وقتی که ما نگاه میکنیم به مهاجرت افغانای عزیز میبینیم که در تمام از این حوزه‌ها با تفاوت‌ها مواجه میشن. فرهنگ معمول و مروج افغانستان فرهنگ جمع‌گرا و خانواده محور است. خانواده ارزشی بسیار زیاد داره و معمولا خانواده کوچک هم نیست. در کنار خانواده اعضای دیگه هستن که رو خانواده کلانتر و اقارب و اقوام و آشناها و خویشاوندان هم شامل میشه. به اون خاطر زمان که ما از خانواده افغان صحبت میکنیم در حقیقت از چندین خانواده صحبت میکنیم. سیستم داخل خانواده هم فرق میکنه که در او افراد سلسله مراتب دارن و هر کس نظر به مرتبه قویتر و منزلت بیشتر، احترام بیشتر و قدرت بیشتر داره. این در محیط نو در کشور میزبان مثلا در ایالات متحده کاملا متفاوت است. در ایالات متحده خانواده بسیار کوچک است، یک خانواده هسته است. و اقارب و خویشاوندا در تصمیم گیری خانواده در نوع زندگیشان نقش زیادی ندارند، بلکه سیستم هست، سیستم های اداری و اجتماعی است که سر خانواده نفوذ بیشتر داره و برش میتونه تکلیف تعیین بکنه. دومین مسئله زبان است. زبانی که ما با او صحبت میکنیم فارسی و پشتو و زبانهای دیگه که در افغانستان رایج است، در اینجا او زبانها صحبت نمیشه و در عوض حداقل زبان انگلیسی بیشتر مروج است در کنار بعضی زبانهای دیگه. این هم برای افرادی که هیچ زبان بلد نیستن یا بسیار کم بلد هستن میتونه یک مشکل ایجاد بکنه و اونا را با استرس بیشتر مواجه بکنه، به خصوص اگر سنشان کمی بالاتر باشه و فکر کنن که توان از این ندارن تا زبان نو یاد بگیرن. موضوع فردگرا بودن و جمعگرا بودن مسئله بسیار مهم است، به خاطر از اینکه یک تعداد از مشکلاتی که در خانواده‌های مهاجر پیدا میشه بر اساس امی مسئله است، بر اساس امی تفاوت است. اینا احساس میکنن که نیاز است تا اینمو ارزش‌ها را حفظ کنن و بر اساس قوانین خانوادگی خود به پیش برن، در حالی که در اینجا قوانین به شکل دیگه است و ارزش‌هایی که تعیین میکنه در خانواده چه چیزا بگذره و نقش‌های خانوادگی چگونه تعیین شود بر اساس قدرت اعضای خانواده لزوما نیست، بلکه فاکتورهای دیگه بیرون از خانواده است که خانواده سر از اونا کنترل نداره. این میتونه یک سلسله مشکلات برای خانواده ایجاد کنه و افراد در خانواده زیر فشار قرار بگیرن یا با قانون به مشکل مواجه شوند. موضوع دوم مسئله موقعیت اجتماعی و شغل است. افرادی که مهاجر میشن طبیعتاً موقعیت اجتماعی را که در کشور اولی خود داشتن او را دیگر نمی داشته باشن، از دست میتن. در اونجا ممکن است اینا شخص بسیار با نفوذ در محله خود بودن، در منطقه خود بودن یا شغل بسیار مهم داشتن، در حالی که کل از اونا ترک میشه، از دستشان میره و در محیط نو وقتی که میاین میبینن که این چیزها از دست رفته و دوباره به دست آوردنش یک چیز غیر ممکن است، مگر اینکه به یک سلسله فعالیت ها دست بزنن تا حدود اینمو امتیازات اعاده شود و به دست بیاید. این هم میتونه از نظر اجتماعی، از نظر شغلی و از نظر اقتصادی سرشان تاثیر بگذاره و اونا را زیر فشار قرار بده. سومین موضوع ناآشنایی با سیستم سیاسی، اجتماعی و حقوقی است. وقتی افراد در کشور خود زندگی میکنن طبیعتاً با سیستم های اجتماعی و سیاسی و حقوقی آشناستن یا آشنا میشن نظر به سر و کار داشتن با اون سیستم ها. در محیط نو در کشور میزبان و بخصوص مقایسه ما بین افغانستان و امریکا هست، این تفاوت بسیار بنیادی است و سیستم ها متفاوت هستند. سیستم های حقوقی متفاوت است، سیستم های اجتماعی متفاوت است. همونطور که اشاره کردم فرهنگ فردگرا سر سیستم ها تاثیر میگذاره. اینا سبب میشن که فرد زیر فشار بیاد چون آشنا نیست و این آشنایی گاهی سبب میشه که متوجه نشه حقوقش چی است، متوجه نشه چگونه امتیازاتی وجود داره که از اونا میتونه استفاده کنه، متوجه از این نباشه که چطور از منابعی که وجود داره بتونه درست استفاده کنه در قسمت اقتصاد، در قسمت تحصیل و تعلیم و تربیه برای خود و اولاد خود و در حوزه‌های شغلی و اقتصادی متفاوت دیگه. زمانی که نتونست از اینا استفاده کنه، اینا سبب میشه که در حقیقت محروم بمانه و محروم ماندن از اینا سرش فشار وارد میکنه. خلاصه این چالش هایی که در 3 بخش من تقسیم کردم، در بخش فرهنگ، در بخش از دست دادن موقعیت شغلی و اجتماعی و در بخش ناآشنایی با سیستم های حقوقی، اداری و سیاسی، در حقیقت مهمترین عوامل هستند که روی سطح روانی افراد تاثیر خود به جا میگذارن پس از مهاجرت. در صورتی که به هر یکی از اینا رسیدگی شود، شخص آرام آرام خود با این محیط نو آشنا بکنه یا از منابع کمک بگیره که او را پشتیبانی بکنن و برش یاد بدن که چطور از این سیستم ها استفاده کنه، چطور خود با فرهنگ نو تطابق بده، اینا سرش یک کمک بسیار خوب برش است و سرش تاثیر مثبت میگذاره و سبب میشه تا این افراد با خاطر آرامتر، با امنیت روانی بیشتر، با آرامش خاطر بیشتر به زندگی خود ادامه بدن و از خشونت و دردهای مشکل ساز جسمی و روحی بدور باشن. در پروژه ما هم تلاش میشه تا حتی الامکان در حد توان به این مشکلات رسیدگی شود و خدمات برای افراد فراهم شود. در صورتی که شما نیاز داشتین به این خدمات میتونین با دفتر ما تماس بگیرین. شماره تلفن ما است 510 745 1683 یا با وبسایت افغان کالیشن مراجعه کنین و پروژه افغان منتال هلث ببینین. از اونجا معلومات بیشتر براتان فراهم میشه.